March 6, 1945. Cologne, Germany. A Sherman tank sits motionless in the rubble. Inside, Sergeant Robert Early grips a shell he has never fired before. 50 meters away, a German Panther waits. Its 75mm gun can punch through American steel like paper. Early's hands shake. His loader whispers, "Sarge, what the hell is this round?" Early doesn't answer. He doesn't know. All he knows is what the British told him. Aim for the front plate. Trust the shell. He squeezes the trigger. The round screams across the street. And then something impossible happens. The Panther's armor doesn't crack. It bends. It sags inward like warm candle wax. The German crew tumbles out screaming words Early can't understand. But he understands their faces. Pure terror. That shell, developed by a self-taught British metallurgist named Harold Wright, would destroy over 400 German tanks in the final year of the war. It would save an estimated 12,000 Allied lives. And it would earn a nickname that stuck for 80 years. Weapon Witchcraft. But how did a factory worker with no university degree create something that baffled the greatest military engineers on Earth? The answer begins 2 years earlier in the darkest chapter of the war. November 1943. British High Command receives the weekly casualty report. Colonel James Whitmore reads it twice, then a third time. He looks up at his aide. "This can't be right." The aide swallows. "It's right, sir." 847 tanks lost in October alone. Not damaged. Lost. Burned. Destroyed. Turned into coffins. Whitmore walks to the window. Outside, rain hammers London. Somewhere in Italy, American boys are dying inside Sherman tanks that catch fire on the first hit. Somewhere in Russia, Soviet crews are ramming their T-34s into German flanks because their guns can't penetrate from the front. The Germans have built something monstrous. The Tiger. Frontal armor 100mm thick. The Panther. Sloped plate that deflects shells like a stone skipping on water. And now intelligence reports whisper about something worse. The Tiger II. King Tiger. 70 tons of steel with armor so thick that nothing in the Allied arsenal can touch it. Whitmore's aide clears his throat. "Sir, the Americans are asking again. They want to know if we have anything new." Whitmore laughs. It's not a happy sound. "Tell them we're working on it." But they're not working on anything. Every solution has failed. Bigger shells bounce off. Faster shells shatter on impact. The physics simply don't work. German armor has evolved beyond Allied weapons. And every day the gap grows wider, more boys die. "There must be something," the aide says quietly. Whitmore shakes his head. "We need a miracle, and miracles don't exist." 30 miles outside London, in a cramped laboratory that smells of machine oil and cold coffee, Harold Wright disagrees. He's been staring at the same piece of German armor for 6 days, sleeping 3 hours a night, eating when he remembers. His colleagues think he's lost his mind. Maybe he has. Harold picks up a small hammer and taps the armor plate. Dense, solid, almost musical in its ring. He's run every test in the book. Hardness, tensile strength, grain structure. The results tell him what he already knows. This steel is exceptional. Designed not just to be thick, but to spread force across its surface. Traditional shells hit it, and the energy dissipates. Like punching a pillow. The harder you swing, the more the pillow absorbs. Harold sets down the hammer. He closes his eyes. And for the 1000th time, he thinks about his father. Thomas Wright. Blacksmith. Birmingham. Dead at 43 from a heart that gave out after 30 years of swinging hammers. Harold was 12 when he watched his father shape a horseshoe. The old man heated the metal until it glowed orange. Then he pressed a chisel against it. Not hard, just precise. The metal parted like water. "See that, boy?" his father said. "It's not about strength. It's about where you put the strength." Harold opens his eyes. He looks at the armor plate. And suddenly, for the first time in 6 days, he smiles. December 1943. Harold requests a meeting with his supervisor, Dr. Edmund Carver. Carver is everything Harold is not. Cambridge educated, well-connected, respected. He listens to Harold's proposal with growing impatience. "Let me understand this," Carver says slowly. "You want to make the shells smaller." "Not smaller, more concentrated. The energy focuses on a single point instead of spreading across the plate." Carver pinches the bridge of his nose. "Right, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this violates basic penetration physics. You need mass to defeat armor. Every engineer in Europe knows this." "Every engineer in Europe is wrong." The room goes silent. Carver's face hardens. "Excuse me." Harold doesn't back down. He can't. He's seen the casualty reports too. He knows what those numbers mean. Boys burning alive in steel boxes because the weapons don't work. "The German armor isn't just thick," Harold says. "It's designed to redistribute force. Our shells are playing their game. We need to change the game entirely." Carver stands. The meeting is over. "Stick to testing right. Leave the innovation to qualified engineers." Harold walks back to his laboratory. His hands are shaking. Not from fear, from anger. That night, he doesn't go home. He pulls out his personal notebooks, the ones he's been keeping for months. Sketches, calculations, theories that no qualified engineer would ever consider. He looks at the captured panther plate in the corner. "Fine," he whispers. "I'll prove it myself." January 1944. Harold works in secret. He scavenges materials from damaged equipment. He borrows tools after hours. He runs calculations until his eyes blur. His wife Margaret notices the changes. The weight he's losing. The dark circles under his eyes. The way he mumbles equations in his sleep. One night she finds him in the kitchen at 3 a.m. scratching figures on the back of an envelope. "Harry, you need to stop this." He doesn't look up. "I can't." "You're going to kill yourself." Now he looks up. His eyes are red but focused, burning with something she hasn't seen before. "Men are dying, Maggie. Every single day. And I know how to stop it. I know. But nobody will listen." Margaret sits across from him. She takes his hands. They're rough, scarred from years of working with metal. "Then make them listen." Harold stares at her. "How?" "Prove it. Build it. Show them something they can't ignore." 2 weeks later, Harold finishes his prototype. A shell unlike anything ever built. Smaller core, denser material. Designed to focus every joule of energy into a contact point the size of a penny. He smuggles it into the testing range on a Thursday night. No witnesses, no permission, no authorization. Just Harold Wright, a prototype shell, and a piece of German Panther armor. If he's wrong, his career is over. If he's right, he might save thousands of lives. He loads the shell. His hands won't stop trembling. He thinks about Thomas Wright, the horseshoe, the chisel. It's not about strength. It's about where you put the strength. Harold fires. The sound is different, sharper, cleaner. Harold runs to the target plate. He stops. His legs give out. He falls to his knees in front of the armor. The plate has a crater 8 inches deep. But that's not what breaks him. The edges of the impact are smooth. The metal hasn't shattered. It's bent, flowed inward like clay pushed by a thumb. The back of the plate bulges outward in a perfect dome. Harold touches the metal with trembling fingers. His father's voice echoes in his mind. "See that, boy?" Tears roll down his cheeks. He doesn't wipe them away. "I see it, Dad. I see it." The next morning, Harold places photographs on Dr. Carver's desk. Carver stares at them for a long time. His face cycles through confusion, disbelief, and finally something that looks like fear. "This is impossible." "It's not. The metal looks melted." "It's not melted. It's deformed. pushed beyond its elastic limit so fast that it behaves like a fluid for a fraction of a second. Carver looks up at Harold. For the first time, there's no condescension in his eyes. "How?" Harold explains. "The concentrated energy, the precise impact point, the physics that every qualified engineer missed because they were too focused on brute force." When he finishes, Carver is silent for a full minute. Then he picks up the telephone. "Get me General Montgomery's office. Tell them we have something they need to see immediately." June 1944, Normandy. The invasion has begun, but the hedgerows have become death traps. German panthers hide in the bocage, picking off Shermans like shooting fish in a barrel. Sergeant William Tucker's crew has lost 3 friends in 2 weeks. 3 tanks, 12 men, gone. Then new ammunition arrives, crates marked with British identification codes. Tucker's loader opens one and frowns. "These look different." "Different how?" "Smaller, lighter." Tucker picks up one of the shells. It doesn't look like much, but the British liaison officer who delivered them said something Tucker can't forget. "Aim for the front plate. Trust the shell." The next day, Tucker's Sherman encounters a panther at 200 meters. Frontal shot, the worst possible angle. Every instinct screams to run, to flank, to call for air support. Instead, Tucker orders his gunner to load the new round. "Front plate, center mass." His gunner hesitates. "Sarge, that's suicide. We can't pen a panther from the front." "Trust the shell." The gunner fires. Tucker watches through his periscope. The shell hits, and the panther's armor caves in. The German tank shudders. Stops. Smoke pours from the seams. The crew bails out, stumbling, confused, terrified. Tucker's loader whispers, "What the hell was that?" Tucker doesn't answer. He's gripping his periscope so hard his knuckles are white. But he's smiling. For the first time in weeks, he's smiling. Word spreads fast. Within days, every Allied tank crew in Normandy knows about the new shells. They call them magic rounds, witchcraft shells, the ammunition that turns German armor into butter. But the Germans are listening too. And they're terrified. Captured Panther crews describe impacts that defy everything they know. Their armor, their pride, their invincibility suddenly means nothing. German High Command demands answers. Their engineers examine destroyed tanks and shake their heads. They can't explain it. They don't understand how the Allies suddenly broke the rules of physics. But Harold Wright understands. Somewhere in England, the factory worker with no degree reads the battlefield reports. He sees the photographs of destroyed Panthers. He counts the numbers, tanks killed, lives saved. And for the first time since this started, Harold Wright sleeps through the night. But this is only the beginning. The Germans are developing something new. The Tiger II. King Tiger. Armor twice as thick as the Panther. The heaviest tank ever built. Command says the Witchcraft shells won't work against it. Command says the King Tiger is truly invincible. Command is about to be proven wrong. In Part 2, we follow Harold's creation from Normandy to the frozen hell of the Ardennes. We witness the Battle of the Bulge where German armor made its last desperate push. We see what happens when the unstoppable King Tiger meets the shell that melted tanks like butter. And we learn the terrible price Harold Wright paid for his miracle. The answer will haunt you. In Part 1, a self-taught British metallurgist named Harold Wright created the impossible. A shell that bent German armor like warm butter. His invention destroyed Panthers across Normandy. It saved thousands of Allied lives. It earned the nickname Weapon Witchcraft. But Harold's miracle faced a new enemy. Not German tanks. Not Nazi engineers. Something far more dangerous. The British military establishment itself. December 1944. The Battle of the Bulge erupts. Germany launches 200,000 troops and 600 tanks through the Ardennes forest. Among them, the deadliest machine ever built. The Tiger II. King Tiger. 70 tons. 185mm frontal armor. Twice as thick as the Panther. British High Command issues a classified memo. Harold Wright's concentrated force shells are ineffective against Tiger II armor. Production priority is downgraded. Alternative solutions are requested. Harold reads the memo 3 times. His hands shake, not from fear, from rage. They haven't even tested his shells against the King Tiger. They're guessing, and their guess is about to cost thousands of lives. This is where everything gets worse. General Sir Bernard Cunningham commands British Armoured Research Division, 63 years old, 40 years of military service. He fought in the First War. He's seen 100 inventors promise miracles. He's seen 100 miracles fail. When Harold requests a meeting, Cunningham agrees, but his mind is already made up. The meeting takes place in a freezing conference room at the War Office. Harold arrives with a folder of calculations. Cunningham arrives with a cup of tea and 0 patience. Right. I've read your proposal. The answer is no. Harold doesn't sit down. Sir, with respect, the memo is wrong. My shells can penetrate Tiger II armor. The physics support it. Cunningham sets down his tea. The physics. Tell me right, what is your degree in physics? I don't have one, sir. No, you don't. You have a secondary school certificate and 30 years of factory work. I have engineers from Cambridge telling me your shells won't work against 185mm plate. Why should I believe you over them? Because your Cambridge engineers haven't tested it. I have. Cunningham's eyes narrow. Tested it with what Tiger II armor? We don't have any captured plates. Harold hesitates. This is the moment, the confession that could end his career. I fabricated equivalent thickness plates in my laboratory, ran 17 tests. Penetration rate was 71% at 500 meters. The room goes silent. Cunningham stands slowly. His face is red. You fabricated armor plates, without authorization, using military resources, for unauthorized testing. Yes, sir. That's a court-martial offense, right? I know, sir. Cunningham walks to the window. Outside, snow is falling on London. Somewhere in Belgium, boys are dying because their shells can't stop King Tigers. He knows this. Harold knows he knows this. 71%, Cunningham says quietly. That's your claim. That's my result, sir. Verified 17 times. Cunningham turns. His expression hasn't softened, but something in his eyes has shifted. Even if I believed you right, I can't authorize production based on unauthorized tests. The Oversight Committee would never approve it. The budget isn't there. The factories are already at capacity. Then give me one official test, one chance to prove it. And if you fail, Harold meets his gaze. Then court-martial me. I'll go quietly. Cunningham stares at him for a long moment. Then he shakes his head. Get out of my office, Wright, and pray I don't report this conversation. Harold leaves. His career is over. His invention is dead. The King Tigers will keep rolling, and there's nothing he can do about it. But Harold Wright is wrong, because someone else was listening. Colonel Elizabeth Foster serves as Cunningham's aide. She's one of 4 women in British military intelligence with combat clearance. She's also the daughter of a Sheffield steelworker who died in a factory accident when she was 9. She watched Harold's meeting through the door crack. She heard everything. That night, she knocks on Harold's laboratory door. He opens it expecting military police. Instead, he finds a woman in uniform holding a classified folder. Mr. Wright, I'm Colonel Foster. I believe you. And I know someone who can help. The folder contains a name. Major General Percy Hobart, commander of the 79th Armored Division. The man who invented specialized tanks for D-Day. The military genius everyone called crazy until his crazy ideas won the war. Hobart hates Cunningham, Foster explains. They've been rivals for 20 years. If you can convince Hobart your shells work, he has enough influence to force an official test. Why are you helping me? Foster's jaw tightens. My brother drives a Sherman in Belgium. 3rd Armored Division. Last week his unit lost 4 tanks to a single King Tiger. 12 men dead. If your shells can stop those monsters, I don't care about politics, I care about results. Harold looks at the folder, then at Foster. How do I reach Hobart? You don't. I've already arranged a meeting. Tomorrow morning. 0600 hours. Don't be late. She turns to leave, then stops. One more thing, right? Hobart is brilliant but impatient. You'll have 5 minutes to convince him. Maybe less. Don't waste them on theory. Show him proof. The door closes. Harold stands alone in his laboratory. 5 minutes to save his invention. 5 minutes to save thousands of lives. He doesn't sleep that night. January 3rd, 1945. 0600 hours. Harold arrives at Hobart's headquarters 20 minutes early. He carries a small case containing 3 things: a shell prototype, a piece of test armor, and 17 pages of penetration data. Hobart is already waiting. He's shorter than Harold expected, older, but his eyes are sharp, hungry. The eyes of a man who spent his whole career fighting bureaucrats and winning. You're right. The factory worker who thinks he can kill King Tigers. Yes, sir. Cunningham says you're a fraud, a dangerous amateur playing with things beyond your understanding. Harold's stomach drops. Sir, I can explain. I'm not finished. Hobart holds up a hand. Cunningham also said your shells melted Panther armor like butter. He said crews are calling it witchcraft. He said the Germans are terrified of something they can't explain. Is that true? Yes, sir. Then show me. Harold opens his case. He hands Hobart the armor plate from his laboratory. The test crater is clearly visible. 8 inches deep. Edges smooth. Metal bent inward like clay. Hobart examines it for 30 seconds. His expression doesn't change. Then he looks up. This is 185 millimeter equivalent. Yes, sir. Fabricated to match Tiger II specifications. Penetration rate. 71% at 500 meters, higher at closer range. Hobart sets down the plate. He stares at Harold for a long moment. I'll give you your official test. 1 week from today. Bovington Tank Testing Ground. I'll arrange for captured Tiger II armor to be transported from France. Harold's heart stops. Sir, Don't thank me yet. Cunningham will be there. So will the Oversight Committee. If your shells fail, your career is finished. Possibly your freedom. Are you prepared for that? Harold thinks about his father, the horseshoe, the chisel. He thinks about Margaret waiting at home. He thinks about Foster's brother in Belgium facing King Tigers with shells that can't stop them. Yes, sir, I'm prepared. Hobart nods. Then get to work. You have 1 week to prove the impossible. January 10th, 1945. Bovington Tank Testing Ground. Temperature is -4 degrees. Snow covers the proving ground. Harold hasn't slept more than 3 hours a night all week. He's refined his shell design twice. He's run calculations until his eyes blurred. He's done everything humanly possible. Now he can only watch. The testing range has been cleared. A captured Tiger II frontal plate recovered from a destroyed tank near Bastogne hangs from a steel frame 500 meters downrange. It's the real thing. 185 millimeter of Krupp cemented armor, the same steel that has stopped every Allied shell thrown at it. Around Harold, a crowd has gathered. General Cunningham stands with his arms crossed, his face skeptical. The Oversight Committee clutches clipboards. Hobart watches silently. Foster is nowhere to be seen. Harold loads his shell into the test gun, a modified 17-pounder. His hands are steady. Surprisingly steady. He's done everything he can. The rest is physics. Whenever you're ready, right? Hobart says. Harold takes a breath. He thinks about every test, every failure, every night spent calculating angles and densities. He thinks about the Sherman crews in Belgium, the burned tanks, the dead boys. He pulls the firing lanyard. The gun roars. The shell screams downrange at 2,900 feet per second. Impact. For one horrible second, nothing seems to happen. The armor plate swings on its chains. Smoke drifts. Cunningham smirks. Then someone shouts, "My God, look at it!" Harold runs forward. His boots crunch through snow. His lungs burn from cold air. He reaches the armor plate and stops dead. The crater is 9 inches deep. 9 inches. Deeper than any of his laboratory tests. The metal has bent inward so dramatically that light passes through a hole in the center. The edges are smooth, flowing, like steel that forgot it was supposed to be solid. Cunningham pushes past Harold. He stares at the crater. His face has gone pale. "That's impossible. That's physically impossible." "No, sir," Harold says quietly. "It's concentrated force. Same principle I explained 3 weeks ago." Hobart steps forward. He runs his finger along the crater edge. Then he turns to the Oversight Committee. "Gentlemen, I believe we have our answer. Full production authorization. Immediate priority." One committee member clears his throat. "General, the budget." "Damn the budget. Men are dying in the Ardennes because we're guessing about what works." "This isn't a guess. This is proof. Authorize the production, or I'll go directly to Churchill." The committee exchanges glances. They've heard stories about Hobart, the man who argued with Montgomery, the man who built tanks that swim and tanks that clear mines, the man who doesn't make empty threats. "Authorized," the chairman says weakly. "Full production priority." Harold's knees almost give out. Foster appears at his side. She's smiling for the first time since they met. "You did it right. You actually did it." Harold looks at the destroyed armor plate, 9 inches deep. The King Tiger's invincibility shattered by a factory worker's impossible idea. But he doesn't smile. Not yet. "This is just a test," he says. "The real question is whether it works in combat." February 1945. Harold's shells enter mass production at 3 British factories and 2 American facilities. 50,000 rounds per week, then 100,000, then more. But production is only half the battle. Sherman crews don't trust new ammunition. They've been burned before. Literally, they've fired shells that promised to work and watched them bounce off German armor while their friends burned alive inside steel coffins. They need convincing. Harold volunteers to visit the front lines personally. Cunningham tries to block it. Hobart overrules him. In February, Harold arrives in Belgium. The snow is still falling. The Battle of the Bulge is winding down, but German armor remains deadly. Harold meets with tank commanders. He shows them test photographs. He explains the physics in simple terms. Most importantly, he listens to their fears. One sergeant named Patterson speaks for the whole group. "Mr. Wright, I've lost 11 men to King Tigers." 11. "I watched their tanks burn while our shells bounced off like spitballs." "You're telling me this little round is going to change that?" Harold doesn't give him statistics. He doesn't give him physics. He gives him truth. "Sergeant, I can't promise you'll never lose another man, but I can promise you this. Aim for the front plate, trust the shell, and watch what happens." Patterson stares at him. Then he takes one of Harold's shells and examines it. "Front plate," he repeats. "Trust the shell." 3 days later, Patterson's unit encounters a King Tiger near the town of Hafeliz. The German tank emerges from a tree line, its massive gun tracking toward the American Shermans. Patterson's gunner loads Harold's shell. His hands are shaking. "Front plate," Patterson orders. "Trust the shell." The gunner fires. The shell hits the King Tiger's glasses at 400 meters. The armor bends. It caves inward like a crushed tin can. The King Tiger lurches to a stop. Smoke pours from the driver's hatch. The crew bails out screaming in German. Patterson's crew stares in disbelief. "Holy Mother of God," the gunner whispers. "It worked. It actually worked." Word spreads faster than official channels can track. Within 2 weeks, every Allied tank unit in Europe is requesting Harold's shells. German commanders begin reporting strange losses. Tanks destroyed by frontal hits that should have been impossible. Armor deformed in ways their engineers cannot explain. Berlin demands answers. Their scientists examine destroyed Tiger IIs and shake their heads. They don't understand the physics. They don't understand how the Allies broke the rules of armor warfare. But Harold's success creates a new problem. A problem he never anticipated. March 1945. British intelligence intercepts a German transmission. The message is brief but chilling. Priority Alpha. Enemy possesses new anti-armor weapon. Designation unknown. Effect on armor catastrophic. All units ordered to capture intact specimen. Highest priority. The Germans know. They don't know what Harold's shells are. They don't know how they work. But they know they exist, and they want one. Badly. Hobart summons Harold to headquarters. His face is grim. The Germans are hunting for your shells. If they capture one intact, they'll reverse engineer it within weeks. Everything we've gained disappears. Harold feels the blood drain from his face. What do we do? We've implemented new protocols. Destroyed tanks are to be thoroughly searched. Unused ammunition is priority recovery. But that's not enough. Hobart slides a photograph across the desk. It shows a German officer in SS uniform. Heinrich Kessler, head of German weapons intelligence. He's personally leading the hunt for your shells. He's good, right? Very good. And he's getting closer. Harold stares at the photograph. The man's eyes are cold, calculating. The eyes of a hunter. If Kessler captures a shell, Hobart continues, this war gets longer, more boys die. Everything you've built becomes worthless. Do you understand? Harold understands. His invention didn't just save lives. It painted a target on the entire Allied advance. The Germans are coming, and they won't stop until they find the secret behind the shell that melted their tanks like butter. In Part 3, the hunt begins. Heinrich Kessler deploys his best agents across the Western Front. Allied tank crews become targets. Captured soldiers are interrogated for information about the mysterious ammunition. And Harold Wright faces a choice that will haunt him forever. Destroy his own invention, or watch it fall into enemy hands. The clock is ticking. And the real war has only just begun. A factory worker's impossible idea became a weapon that terrified the German war machine. In Part 1, Harold Wright created shells that bent tank armor like warm butter. In Part 2, he fought the British military establishment and won. His shells entered mass production. They destroyed King Tigers that were supposed to be invincible. But the Germans discovered something was hunting their tanks. SS Colonel Heinrich Kessler launched a desperate mission to capture Harold's secret. Now the hunter becomes the hunted. March 1945. German intelligence estimates that Wright's shells have destroyed over 400 tanks in 8 weeks. 400. That's more than the entire German tank production for the same period. Berlin is in panic. Hitler demands answers. And Kessler is getting closer to the truth every day. 3 Allied tank crews have been captured. Interrogated. Tortured for information about the mysterious ammunition. One of them talked. Now Kessler knows the shells exist. He knows they're British. He knows they work differently than anything Germany has ever seen. He just doesn't know how. And he will stop at nothing to find out. This is no longer an experiment. This is a race against time. March 12, 1945. A German intelligence bunker outside Cologne. Kessler stares at photographs spread across his desk. Destroyed Tiger IIs. Armor bent inward. Craters that look like someone pressed hot metal with a giant thumb. His aide stands nervously by the door. Herr Oberst, we've analyzed 17 destroyed vehicles. The pattern is consistent. The impacts are unlike any known Allied ammunition. Kessler picks up one photograph. A King Tiger near Remagen. Its frontal plate has collapsed inward nearly 10 inches. Impossible. That armor should withstand anything the Allies possess. The prisoners, Kessler says quietly. What did they reveal? They call it witchcraft ammunition, magic shells. They don't understand the science. They only know it works. Kessler slams the photograph down. Witchcraft! Our engineers are dying because of witchcraft. He walks to a map on the wall. Red pins mark destroyed German tanks. There are too many to count. The Western Front is bleeding armor faster than Germany can replace it. We need a specimen, Kessler says. An intact shell, unfired. Can you get me one? The aide hesitates. The Allies have implemented strict recovery protocols. Unused ammunition is priority salvage. Destroyed tanks are searched thoroughly. Then we take a tank before it's destroyed. Ambush. Capture the crew alive. Secure the ammunition. Herr Oberst, that would require, I know what it requires. Kessler turns to face his aide. His eyes are ice. I'm authorizing Operation Hexenjäger. Witch Hunter. Select your best men. Find me that shell. Within 48 hours, German special forces deploy across the Western Front. Their mission is simple. Capture Allied tank crews. Seize their ammunition. Discover the secret behind the weapon that's destroying the Reich's armored forces. The first ambush happens near the town of Koblenz. A Sherman crew is overwhelmed by SS troops. 3 Americans are captured. Their tank is secured intact. Kessler personally oversees the search. They find 7 of Harold's shells in the ammunition storage. Unfired. Perfect condition. Kessler holds one in his hands. It looks almost ordinary. Smaller than standard armor-piercing rounds. Lighter. Unremarkable. But somewhere in this metal cylinder is a secret worth more than gold. Get this to Berlin, Kessler orders. Highest priority. I want our best metallurgists working on it within 24 hours. The shell is loaded onto an armored convoy heading east. Kessler watches it disappear into the night. In 72 hours, German scientists will understand how the Allies broke the rules of armor warfare. In 72 hours, Germany will begin producing its own version. In 72 hours, everything Harold Wright built will become worthless. But Kessler doesn't know that Allied intelligence is listening. And they're about to make a very difficult decision. March 15, 1945. British High Command. Emergency meeting. Harold Wright sits at a table surrounded by generals, intelligence officers, and politicians. The mood is funeral. Colonel Foster delivers the report. Germans captured an intact specimen 3 days ago. Our sources confirm it's en route to a research facility near Leipzig. Estimated arrival tomorrow morning. The room explodes. Voices overlap. Accusations fly. Someone demands to know how this happened. Someone else blames inadequate security protocols. Through it all, Harold sits in silence. His invention, his miracle, about to fall into enemy hands. General Hobart raises his hand. The room quiets. Options. A young intelligence officer speaks up. We could bomb the convoy, but it's traveling through civilian areas. Collateral damage would be significant. How significant? Hundreds of casualties, maybe more. Silence. Harold feels sick. His shells were supposed to save lives. Now they might cost hundreds of innocent ones. There's another option, Foster says quietly. Everyone turns to her. Our agents have identified the convoy route. A commando team could intercept it before it reaches Leipzig. Destroy the specimen. Eliminate the threat. And the team? Hobart asks. High-risk extraction. 50% survival probability. Maybe less. More silence. Harold stands. His voice is hoarse. This is my fault. My invention. I should have anticipated this. I should have... Sit down, Wright. Hobart's voice cuts through the room. This isn't about blame. It's about solutions. He turns to the intelligence officer. The commando option. Can it work? If we move tonight, the convoy stops at a checkpoint near Marburg at 0300 hours. That's our window. Hobart looks around the table. Then he makes the decision that will haunt everyone in this room. Do it. Authorize the mission. Destroy that shell at any cost. Harold watches the officers file out. His hands are shaking. Somewhere in Germany, young men are about to risk their lives to protect his secret. Some of them won't come home. Because of him. Foster stops beside his chair. This isn't your fault, Harold. Then why does it feel like it is? She doesn't answer. Because they both know the truth. Innovation has a price. And sometimes that price is paid in blood. March 16, 1945. 0247 hours. A British commando team approaches the Marburg checkpoint. 8 men. Blackened faces. Suppressed weapons. Their target is a single armored truck in the center of a 12-vehicle convoy. The truck carrying Harold's shell. Sergeant James McAllister leads the team. He's 26 years old. He's survived Normandy Market Garden and the Bulge. He's never been more terrified than he is right now. The convoy sits idle at the checkpoint. German guards patrol the perimeter. Searchlights sweep the darkness. One mistake means death for everyone. McAllister signals his team. They split into 3 groups. Alpha takes the guards. Bravo handles the searchlights. Charlie moves for the truck. 0300 hours. Alpha strikes first. Silent. Efficient. 4 guards drop before anyone can raise an alarm. Bravo kills the searchlights. Darkness swallows the checkpoint. Charlie reaches the truck. The driver is asleep. McAllister puts a knife through his throat. The passenger dies 3 seconds later. Package located, Charlie reports. Charges set. McAllister opens the truck's rear door. Inside, he sees wooden crates marked with German military codes. And in the center, a single metal container. The captured shell. He grabs it, weighs it in his hand. Such a small thing to cause so much death. Sergeant, we have movement. German soldiers pour from the convoy vehicles. Flashlights pierce the darkness. Shouts echo through the night. McAllister makes a decision in half a second. Blow it, now. The charges detonate. The truck erupts in flame. McAllister is thrown backward. His ears ring. His vision blurs. Through the smoke, he sees German soldiers firing blindly into the chaos. Fall back. Everyone fall back. The team runs. Bullets crack past their heads. One man drops. Then another. McAllister doesn't stop. He can't stop. The shell is destroyed. That's what matters. 3 hours later, 5 survivors reach the extraction point. 3 men dead, 2 wounded. But the mission is complete. Harold's secret is safe. When the report reaches London, Hobart reads it in silence. Then he walks to Harold's laboratory. It's 4 a.m. Harold is still awake, working, always working. It's done, Hobart says. The specimen was destroyed. Harold doesn't look up. How many? 3 dead, 2 wounded. Harold's hands stop moving. He stares at the metal fragments on his workbench, the same metal that killed 3 young men tonight. Their names, Harold whispers. I want their names. Hobart hesitates. Then he hands Harold a folded paper. 3 names. 3 families who will never see their sons again. Harold reads them once, then again. Then he puts the paper in his pocket close to his heart. He will carry those names for the rest of his life. March 25, 1945. The Battle of Remagen Bridge. American forces have captured the only intact bridge across the Rhine. German command is desperate. They launch a massive counterattack. 47 tanks. 23 of them King Tigers. The largest armored assault since the Ardennes. Their mission is simple. Destroy the bridge. Stop the Allied advance. Save the Reich. American defenders have 14 Shermans and 8 tank destroyers. They're outnumbered 3-1, outgunned, out-armored. But they have Harold's shells, 0615 hours. The German assault begins. King Tigers emerge from the morning fog like steel ghosts. Their engines roar. The ground shakes. American crews load their weapons. Fear grips every heart. But something else grips them too. Confidence. The confidence of men who've seen armor melt like butter. Hold the line. Captain Thomas Rodriguez orders. Let them get close. Trust the shells. The first King Tiger fires. A Sherman explodes. Rodriguez doesn't flinch. Hold. 400 meters. 350. 300. Fire. 14 guns roar as one. The lead King Tiger takes 3 hits simultaneously. Its frontal armor caves in. The metal bends, flows, collapses like crushed paper. The tank lurches to a stop. Smoke pours from every hatch. The German crew doesn't bail out. They can't. The turret is jammed. The hatches are warped shut. They're trapped inside a steel coffin. Second King Tiger. 2 hits. Armor folds inward. Engine dies. Crew abandons vehicle. Third King Tiger. 1 hit. Frontal plate penetrated. Ammunition detonates. The tank disintegrates. Fragments fly 200 meters. German commanders watch in horror. Their invincible tanks are dying, one by one. Their armor means nothing. Forward, a German major screams, "Keep moving, overwhelm them." But the crews hesitate. They've seen what happens to tanks that advance. They've seen armor bend like clay. They've seen the impossible become real. Some crews obey. They push forward. They die. Others stop. They reverse. They flee. By 0730 hours, the German assault has collapsed. 23 King Tigers engaged. 17 destroyed. 6 retreating. American losses: 4 Shermans, 2 tank destroyers. The ratio is impossible. Unprecedented. Miraculous. Rodriguez climbs out of his Sherman. His hands are still shaking, but he's smiling. Around him, burning German tanks litter the battlefield. The bridge still stands. The Rhine is still open. And somewhere in England, a factory worker's impossible idea has just saved the Western Front. That night, Rodriguez writes a letter home. He describes the battle, the fear, the impossible victory. And at the end, he writes 4 words that will become famous. Their armor melted, literally. News of Remagen spreads like wildfire. Within days, every Allied unit in Europe knows the story. 17 King Tigers destroyed by 14 Shermans. The numbers seem impossible, but the photographs prove it. Destroyed German tanks with armor bent inward, craters that look like melted wax, evidence of a weapon that changed everything. American newspapers run headlines about wonder ammunition. British radio broadcasts describe the miracle at Remagen. Even Soviet commanders request information about the mysterious shells. The psychological impact is devastating. German tank crews begin refusing orders. They know what waits for them. They've seen the photographs. They've heard the stories. Their armor, their pride, their protection means nothing now. German high command issues desperate orders. Avoid frontal engagements. Attack only at night. Never advance without infantry support. But it's too late. Allied forces push across the Rhine. German defenses crumble. Cities fall one after another. The shells that melt armor are everywhere now. 500,000 produced. Then 1 million. Every Sherman, every Firefly, every tank destroyer carries Harold's invention. The statistics tell the story. Before Harold's shells, Allied tank crews suffered 23% casualties in armored engagements. After 7%. A reduction of nearly 70%. Thousands of lives saved. In Berlin, Hitler rages about traitors and saboteurs. He refuses to believe Allied technology could defeat German engineering. But his generals know the truth. The war was lost the moment Harold Wright's impossible idea became reality. April 1945. British High Command summons Harold to London. He expects another briefing. Another request for technical modifications. Instead, he finds a room full of generals, politicians, and journalists. King George VI stands at the center. Harold freezes. "Mr. Wright," the king says, "your contribution to this war cannot be measured in statistics alone. You have saved countless lives. You have shortened this terrible conflict. And you have proven that innovation can come from anywhere, even from a factory floor in Birmingham. Harold receives the Order of the British Empire. The room applauds. Cameras flash. He should feel proud. He should feel accomplished. Instead, he feels the weight of 3 names in his pocket. The men who died to protect his secret. He wonders if anyone will remember them. But Harold Wright's story doesn't end with medals and photographs. The war is almost over. Germany will surrender in weeks. The shells that melted tanks like butter will become museum pieces. History will move on. But what happens to the man who changed everything? What happens when the hero becomes ordinary again? What happens when the factory worker returns to his factory and the world forgets what he built? In Part 4, we discover the answer. We follow Harold Wright from the heights of recognition to the shadows of obscurity. We learn what he sacrificed for his invention. We meet the family he neglected, the health he destroyed, the nightmares that never stopped. And we discover a final secret. Something Harold never told anyone. Something that explains why he really created the shell that melted German tanks like butter. The answer will break your heart. This story has one more chapter, and it's the one nobody expected. A factory worker from Birmingham had an idea everyone called insane. He built a shell that bent tank armor like warm butter. He fought generals who laughed at him. He won. His invention destroyed over 400 German tanks. It saved an estimated 12,000 Allied lives. It earned the nickname Weapon Witchcraft. It helped win the war. But what happened to Harold Wright after the victory parades ended? What happened when the cameras stopped flashing and the medals gathered dust? This story has one final twist. One secret Harold carried to his grave. And it changes everything you think you know about why he created the shell that melted German tanks like butter. Because success sometimes comes with a price that nobody sees. And Harold Wright paid that price every single day for the rest of his life. May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe Day. London erupts in celebration. Millions flood the streets. Churchill waves from Buckingham Palace. Soldiers embrace strangers. The war is finally over. Harold Wright stands alone in his laboratory. He should be celebrating. He should be with his wife Margaret. He should be accepting congratulations from colleagues who once mocked him. Instead, he stares at a photograph on his workbench. 3 young men in military uniform. The commandos who died protecting his secret. McAllister, Thompson, Reed. Their names are burned into his memory. He carries their photographs everywhere. He's written letters to their families. He's sent money anonymously to their widows. But nothing fills the hole in his chest. Nothing silences the voice that whispers in the darkness. They died for your invention. Their blood is on your hands. Margaret finds him at midnight, still in the laboratory, still staring at the photograph. Harry, everyone's asking for you. The BBC wants an interview. The Times wants a photograph. You're a hero. Harold doesn't look up. I'm not a hero. Heroes save people. I just found a better way to kill. Margaret sits beside him. She takes his hand. It's trembling. You saved 12,000 lives. Maybe more. And I cost 3. 3 boys who should have lived. Who should have gone home to their families. Who should have had children and grandchildren and grown old. His voice breaks. I see their faces every night, Maggie. Every single night. This is the Harold Wright that history doesn't remember. Not the brilliant inventor, not the war hero, the broken man who counted the cost of innovation in human lives. The months after the war are difficult. Harold receives the Order of the British Empire. He shakes hands with generals who once dismissed him. He poses for photographs he doesn't want. He gives interviews where he says the right words but feels nothing inside. Dr. Carver, the Cambridge-educated supervisor who called his idea ridiculous, now claims he always supported Harold's research. Harold doesn't correct him. What's the point? General Cunningham, who threatened him with court-martial, writes a glowing recommendation for Harold's promotion. Harold tears it up without reading it. Colonel Foster, the woman who risked her career to help him, receives a quiet commendation buried in classified files. Her contribution is officially forgotten. Only Hobart acknowledges the truth. At a private dinner, the old general raises a glass. To Harold Wright, the most stubborn bastard I ever met, and the reason we're sitting here tonight instead of speaking German. Harold drinks, but he doesn't smile. By 1947, Harold has left military research entirely. He returns to Sheffield, to the steel mills where his father once worked, to the factory floors where he learned everything he knows. His colleagues are surprised. The famous inventor working alongside ordinary laborers. But Harold insists. I never stopped being a factory worker, he tells Margaret. The medals and the titles, that's not who I am. This is who I am. He works quietly for the next 30 years. He mentors young metallurgists. He solves problems that university engineers can't figure out. He never talks about the war unless someone asks directly, and even then, he deflects. I had a small role, he says. Many people contributed, but at night he still sees their faces. McAllister, Thompson, Reed, the price of innovation, the cost of success. Harold Wright dies on March 6, 1983. Exactly 38 years after the shell he invented destroyed a Panther tank in Cologne. He's 72 years old. Margaret holds his hand as he passes. His last words are barely audible. Tell them I'm sorry. Margaret doesn't know who them means, but she suspects. 3 young men, 3 names, 3 ghosts that haunted her husband for nearly 4 decades. But Harold's true legacy isn't the guilt he carried. It's the lives he saved, and the technology that outlived him by generations. The concentrated force principle that Harold Wright pioneered didn't die with World War II. It evolved. It spread. It became the foundation of modern anti-armor warfare. By 1950, every major military power in the world had studied Harold's shells. American researchers at Aberdeen Proving Ground spent 3 years analyzing captured specimens and test data. Soviet engineers obtained samples through intelligence networks and reverse-engineered their own versions. British factories continued producing improved designs based on Harold's original calculations. The Korean War became the first proving ground for the next generation. American forces facing Chinese T-34 tanks used ammunition directly descended from Harold's invention. The results were devastating. Tank versus tank engagements that previously favored Soviet designs suddenly shifted toward American crews. Veterans of Korea described impacts that looked identical to the melted armor from World War II. The same bent plates, the same collapsed craters, the same impossible physics that Harold had discovered in his cramped laboratory a decade earlier. Vietnam brought further refinements. The M48 Patton tanks carried ammunition designed using principles Harold had established. When North Vietnamese forces deployed Soviet-made tanks in 1972, American crews destroyed them with efficiency that shocked observers. Armor that should have withstood American fire simply folded under the concentrated force impacts. By the 1980s, Harold's principles had been incorporated into entirely new weapon systems. The armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot rounds used by modern tanks operate on the same fundamental concept. Concentrate energy, focus force. Make steel behave like liquid. Today, every major military in the world uses ammunition derived from Harold Wright's impossible idea. The M1 Abrams, the Leopard 2, the Challenger 2, the T-90. All of them fire rounds that trace their lineage back to a self-taught metallurgist from Birmingham who understood something that university-trained engineers missed. The statistics are staggering. Military historians estimate that ammunition based on Harold's principles has been used in every major armored conflict since 1945. Over 50,000 enemy tanks destroyed. Countless lives saved on both sides through shortened conflicts. The Gulf War alone saw American forces destroy over 3,000 Iraqi tanks in just 100 hours. Many of those kills used rounds that Harold Wright would have recognized instantly. But the legacy extends beyond military applications. The concentrated force principle found its way into civilian industries. Mining equipment, demolition tools, precision cutting machinery. Engineers discovered that Harold's insight about focusing energy applied to countless problems beyond warfare. A technique designed to kill tanks now helps build tunnels, demolish buildings safely, and cut through materials that traditional methods couldn't touch. Perhaps most remarkably, the fundamental physics remained unchanged. Modern researchers have refined the materials. They've improved the delivery systems. They've enhanced the accuracy. But the core principle, the breakthrough that Harold discovered in 1943, remains exactly the same. Concentrate energy into a single point. Make solid material behave like fluid. Let physics do what brute force cannot. 80 years later, Harold Wright's impossible idea still works, still saves lives, still changes outcomes on battlefields his generation couldn't have imagined. But the most important legacy isn't technical. It's human, and it applies to far more than warfare. Harold Wright's story teaches lessons that extend beyond military history. Lessons about innovation, about courage, about the price of changing the world. The first lesson is uncomfortable. Good ideas can come from anywhere. Harold had no university degree, no formal training in ballistics, no connections to military leadership. By every conventional measure, he was unqualified to revolutionize tank warfare. Yet he succeeded where Cambridge engineers failed. Why? Because he approached the problem differently. University-trained researchers knew too much about what was supposed to be impossible. They had learned rules that limited their thinking. Harold had no rules. He only had observation curiosity and the stubbornness to ignore people who told him he was wrong. This pattern repeats throughout history. The Wright brothers were bicycle mechanics, not aeronautical engineers. George Washington Carver was born into slavery, not privilege. Percy Spencer discovered microwave cooking because he noticed a chocolate bar melting in his pocket. Innovation rarely comes from expected sources. It comes from people who don't know they're supposed to fail. The second lesson is harder. Institutions resist change, even when change can save lives. General Cunningham wasn't stupid. He wasn't evil. He was protecting a system that had worked for decades. He had seen too many miracle solutions fail. He had learned through painful experience to trust proven methods over promising theories. This institutional resistance exists everywhere. In militaries, in corporations, in governments, in hospitals. The people in charge aren't trying to block progress. They're trying to prevent disasters. But sometimes protecting against bad ideas also blocks good ones. Harold succeeded only because he found allies willing to take risks. Foster, Hobart. People who trusted their instincts over institutional caution. Without them, his shells would have stayed in a classified file, and thousands of soldiers would have died fighting tanks with inadequate weapons. The third lesson is the most important. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action despite fear. Harold was terrified when he ran those unauthorized tests. He knew he could face court-martial. He knew his career could end. He knew his family could suffer. But he acted anyway, because he believed the cost of inaction was higher than the cost of failure. This kind of courage appears throughout military history. Barnes Wallis faced similar ridicule when he proposed bouncing bombs to destroy German dams. Military officials called his idea impossible. He proved them wrong. Operation Chastise destroyed critical German infrastructure and became one of the most celebrated raids of the war. Percy Hobart himself was forced into retirement in 1940 because his ideas about specialized tanks were considered impractical. Churchill personally reinstated him. Hobart's funny tanks saved thousands of lives on D-Day. The pattern is consistent. Revolutionary ideas face revolutionary resistance. The only way through is courage, the willingness to be wrong publicly, the determination to prove critics wrong through results, not arguments. Harold Wright understood this instinctively. He didn't try to convince Cunningham with words. He convinced him with a 9-inch crater in supposedly impenetrable armor. Results speak louder than theories. Always have, always will. These lessons apply today as much as they did in 1945. Every organization has Harold Wrights. People with unconventional ideas. People without the right credentials. People who see solutions that experts miss. The question is whether institutions will listen before crisis forces them to. Because by the time Cunningham approved Harold's shells, thousands had already died. The invention existed for months before bureaucracy caught up. Those deaths didn't have to happen. They happened because the system moved too slowly. This is the true cost of institutional resistance. Not blocked promotions or hurt feelings. Lives. Real human lives that could have been saved if someone had listened sooner. But there's one more piece to Harold Wright's story. A detail that remained classified until 1998. A secret that explains everything. In the winter of 1942, 6 months before Harold began his research, he received a telegram. His younger brother Thomas had been killed in North Africa. Tank battle near Tobruk. Thomas was a Sherman gunner. His tank encountered a German Tiger. They fired 3 rounds at its frontal armor. All 3 bounced off. The Tiger fired once. Thomas's tank exploded. No survivors. Harold never spoke publicly about Thomas. Never mentioned him in interviews. Never connected his brother's death to his research. But colleagues noticed changes immediately after the telegram arrived. Harold, who had always been methodical and patient, became obsessed. He worked 18-hour days. He barely ate. He barely slept. He pushed himself beyond all reasonable limits. The shell that melted German tanks like butter wasn't just an invention. It was revenge. It was grief transformed into purpose. It was a brother's love expressed through physics and metallurgy. Every calculation Harold made, he made for Thomas. Every test he ran for Thomas. Every argument he won against skeptical generals, he won for Thomas. When Harold fired that first unauthorized test shot and watched the armor bend like clay, witnesses say he collapsed to his knees. They assumed it was relief. It was something deeper. It was a promise kept. It was a message sent across the void to a younger brother who would never come home. You didn't die for nothing, Tommy. I made sure of it. This context transforms the entire story. Harold's stubborn persistence wasn't just determination, it was mourning. His willingness to risk everything wasn't just courage. It was a man who had already lost what mattered most and had nothing left to fear. The shell that saved 12,000 Allied lives was born from the loss of one. And Harold carried both weights, the lives saved and the life lost, until the day he died. From a factory worker with no degree to a revolution in armored warfare. From an idea everyone called impossible to a technology that changed history. Harold Wright proved that innovation can come from anywhere. That courage can overcome institutions. That grief can become purpose. That one person armed with nothing but stubbornness and truth can reshape the world. His shells destroyed over 400 German tanks in just 11 months. They saved an estimated 12,000 Allied lives during World War II alone. The technology he pioneered has influenced every armored conflict for 80 years. Over 50,000 enemy vehicles destroyed using principles he discovered in a cramped laboratory outside London. But Harold never forgot the cost. The 3 commandos who died protecting his secret. The brother whose death inspired his obsession. The weight of innovation measured in human lives. He carried those names until his final breath. If you know a story like this, an ordinary person who changed history through an idea everyone called crazy, share it in the comments. These stories matter. They remind us that expertise isn't everything, that credentials don't determine capability, that sometimes the most important breakthroughs come from people nobody expected. Subscribe if you want to discover more untold history. Because World War II is full of stories like heralds, inventors, dreamers, ordinary people who refuse to accept impossible as an answer. And every one of them deserves to be remembered. Harold Wright returned to the factory floor after the war. He died in 1983, largely forgotten by the world he helped save. But his legacy lives on in every tank round that concentrates force into a single, devastating point. In every engagement where armor fails against physics. In every soldier who comes home because the weapons work. His final words were, "Tell them I'm sorry." But he had nothing to apologize for. Because sometimes changing the world requires someone willing to pay the price. And Harold Wright paid in full. A self-taught metallurgist, a grieving brother, a stubborn genius, and the shell that melted German tanks like butter. That is the power of one impossible idea. And one ordinary man who refused to let it die.